conquer North Africa and the lands that was, formerly the ancient Egyptian empire. But now I'm going to read from Dark Light Consciousness about this particular point, and this is saying here. Over the centuries, as our ancestral tribes migrated and crisscrossed the earth, interacting with local climate and ecology, the pineal gland has undergone varying forms of influence. In the northern climates of Europe, the pineal gland experienced some degree of calcification. There is less calcification among people of Asia, and the least amount of pineal gland calcification among people of more direct African background. This may have implications for mankind's experience of spirituality. I've been talking about this for a long time. Some researchers speculate that there is an association with pineal gland calcification and humankind's gradual descent into the world of both materialism and materialist philosophy. This is suggested because the pineal gland is universally associated from Descartes to Kemet, with the capacity to subtly see the literal and spiritual light within us. As we move more into the material realm and lose more of our capacity for sensitivity to these realms, there is increasing pineal gland calcification. So the more material you are, the more your pineal gland calcifies because you're not spiritual. We are now at the point in our collective history where we are so deeply embedded in materialism that large numbers of us even doubt the existence of a spiritual reality itself, let alone the connection between the pineal gland and the capacity to see within. The present materialist world order is an abject rejection of every traditional and spiritual institution from the peoples of Africa, India, Europe, the Middle East, and Mesoamerica. Our age is currently the most materialistic of any in the memory of the world, which I agree. We calculate the timeless orbit of the stars, yet fail to see the eternal cycle within our own souls. And this is exactly what I have come to suspect, and you have as well. It's a lack of empathy, something that we all talk about. How can you do the things that we have seen these people do across the planet for centuries? Enslave people, starve children to death. You know, the things we've seen with 9/11, blowing up children in foreign countries and bringing buildings down on these people. It's a lack of empathy. It's clearly there. And there is a true love of materialism that we see with the Europeans. I mean, just look at everything that we've been seeing. I mean, look at the system they created. It's designed and created, to be basically, servant to money. Material, gold. If you got this material thing, you can be at a certain level. Everything that we are following has to do with materialistic stuff. It's very little spirituality, and they created a whole spiritual situation with religion that's really, it's really designed to basically make you want more material. I mean, it's giving you problems. It's causing conflict within yourself. But we look at how materialistic this stuff is. If you ever watch, I always talk about Meekam, the car auction, how these people can watch people starve to death in the street, kids starving to death, but go and bid, $1 million on the car that they're not really going to drive. We see this all the time. It's materialism. Everything is based off of it. How these people can basically, if you ever watch the show American Pickers, I talked about, these people be having, very expensive, rare cars and bikes and a lot of items that they don't want to part with, at all. They don't want to let it go. Dude come in there and be offering them all kinds of crazy money. I don't want to sell. It is more love in the material than it is, for the person. We see that how they are with animals because it's something that they can control. They love dogs more than they love humans. They love animals more than they love humans. They'll let a human, they'll march up and down the street for animal rights, right next to a bunch of homeless people that are starving to death on the street. So how was you putting so much time and effort and organization into, animals than human people that you can help and put back on their feet quickly? But they don't do it. There's more love for the animal because it's something that they can control and possess. plain and simple. We see that with materialism and everything. Everything that they do. It's a materialistic, world that they live in, and everything is based off of that. And it just seems to be more important than true spirituality. And we see that it's so. To put the value, so much value in materialistic things, and to base a society off of material rather than spirituality is something, that you gotta not have any feeling for in order to do so. That's why I talked about before how we see black people in church getting the Holy Spirit, the so-called Holy Ghost, and getting real spiritual. The same stuff we see in Voodoo. We never seen Europeans do this. Never seen white folks do this. We never see them get that emotional, that feeling when it has to do with spirituality as it pertains to, energy, religion, anything. That spirituality is not there. And we see how it's falsified with people like, Benny Hinn and all these people, these television evangelists that go around fraud and faking it for the money. Because that's basically what it's about. Everything that they do, the reason why they are in the position they are in and structured the way they are, because they put more energy into the material than spirituality. We are way more rational and more understanding because we're like, it's not that serious. I'm not going to pay all this money for no car. I'm not going to pay all this money for that. And it's what they're changing within us, as you can see with hip hop culture. But it's deep when you really start to think about it. It makes a lot of sense when he's talking about the calcification of the pineal gland and how it directly has to do with the lack of empathy and you wanting more material and being more caught up in a materialistic realm. Now, again, I know it's a lot of people who don't like to talk about melanin and don't get caught up in that whole conversation. A lot of people think we just make too much of it. They don't understand the importance of it. So, as I showed before with Dr. Carl Marat talking about chagas, I want you to watch this clip and understand how important it is.
In fact, there's somebody even studying that and wondering whether energy is directly absorbed from the melanin in your skin and transformed into energy in your body. Okay? And they even think about could in the future, and they're developing this now, they're taking melanin and making batteries out of them that store energy from the sunlight directly. It might in fact become a future source of how we're going to generate energy. Now, let's get back with that little bit of physics background. Let's talk about melanin inside chaga and melanin inside the body. So it absorbs thousands of times more electromagnetic radiation actually than chlorophyll does. And chlorophyll is what we need to make proteins and sugars, especially sugars in the body. It exists in many other tissues, as I mentioned. It's actually a very important molecule in any woman who's having a baby, because the fetus has all this melanin in it, as I'll show you. Okay? And it's thought to be, by some people, a master molecule that actually steers how the body communicates. For example, Frank Barr, a scientist, wrote a whole article, a whole issue of a journal called Medical Hypothesis, saying, melanin is such a special molecule and it's found in the babies. It may have a major role in steering things in the body, in the whole regulatory system. Melanin's role in embryological organization, that's in the baby's organization, and tissue repair and tissue regeneration may be connected to the major role that it plays to balance the body, that's called homeostasis, in the autonomic, neuroendocrine, and immunological system. So in other words, melanin may play a much bigger role than just absorbing all this radiation, and when you get it into your body, it actually has a major effect on your immune system. Here's a picture of a baby at 35 days of pregnancy, and this is the eye of an embryo inside a mother. It's a very tiny little thing. Notice that the eye is pure melanin. That's an amazing picture, isn't it? To see all this melanin is inside, and when the embryo first forms, there is what's called the dark streak. It's all melanin. Okay, here's an example of a plant. It's an eggplant that has melanin in it, and a genetically changed one that is no melanin in it. Notice the size of the two difference. I mean, this is an indirect indication that melanin, directly can transduce energy in the vegetable kingdom. Now, the body is a living matrix, and you really want to get this because this is kind of part of the operating system of your body. And I know that as we're talking about it, you really have to strain a little bit to stay with me, but I think it'll make some sense here. The body is actually a communication system where everything is connected to everything else, and it works through light. It works through light. It's called biophotons. And in this communication system, cells have connections to other cells called integrins, and electrons and light flows between cells. So it's like a supercomputer. Your body is like a supercomputer, and the skin is connected to every other part of the body.
So now, as I pointed out before, one of the things he is clearly not saying in that video is that Africans already possess an abundance of melanin. So all the stuff I'm telling you that you're going to have problems with if you don't have this Chagas or have this melanin, the blacks, the Africans will not have this problem. They produce it naturally. It's all over them. Their organs are secreting in it. They have pure melanin all over, so they won't have these problems. So that's something you got to think about. It's a major imbalance. It's a big problem going on that they will not tell Europeans, they will not tell white folks about this stuff to really make sense of their issues. And it's one of the things I talked about before. You got to understand, before we was all on TV, and before we was even really allowed to be free and do all the stuff we was doing, crime was everywhere. It was all over the place. I talked about Dragnet and 1 Adam 12 and how it was showing only white folks on or committing all these crimes. Plain and simple. This is what was going on. This is what is a destructive society. And I believe that they were worried and scared that the people would eventually take over. Because at every point, just go back and look. Every time this government has put a law in place against these white folks, they said, fuck that shit. We go back to Prohibition. You had a whole crime organization across the country going against this government because of Prohibition, because they wanted their booze. They wanted that material possession. So Prohibition happened, and they basically had to end up saying, okay, we got to side with the people and make it legal because this crime is getting out of hand. It's the same thing with the mob. Look at what the mob did. They went against the government. They had organized crime because they said, you know what, this whole thing is a scam. It's about materialism. This stuff, these people is getting stuff. We supposed to sit around and work and be under their fucking thumb while they're making all this money. We got to sit back and really work for this system. They understood it. So the mob did what they did. They went out and took until eventually they got with the program and they got organized and they had enough material possession and enough money to possess what they wanted. They put themselves in a position of power. It's exactly the MO of what these people do. So when they seen that this was going to keep happening, they had to flip the switch. And it's going to make a lot of sense as we go on. It's one of the reasons why they knew they had to allow us to mix, because they had to get melanin in these people to try to control and change that mindset. It was a destructive mindset, and it's not too much stuff they could have got over on the people with. After a while, the people would have took over. You can go back in history and look at how many kings got their head cut off or got killed by the people because they wasn't treating the people right. It has nothing to do with how much we love you and how you are a king. If you treat them right, treat them wrong, and fuck them on their material possessions, they're going to kill you. Just that simple. Can't mess with their money. They're going to kill you. All the rioting and marching and everything like that. You start messing with their material stuff, it's going to be a problem. So we can clearly see there are effects to having little to no melanin. And one of the things you understand is having little melanin in the brain is one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest things that's going on. So your brain has basically this coating of melanin. And where that melanin is in the brain is really rich in iron, which we know iron is a metal. And you have your brain waves that's basically creating this electromagnetic radiation, which is basically producing an electromagnetic field, the brain. I talked about this before, how you have an electromagnetic field from the heart and from the brain as well. So now, because of this iron and because of these brain waves, your brain can basically be influenced by, magnets, by magnetism.